A lot of women over 40 are not just tired, they are unfulfilled. You know that quiet ache, the one that whispers, there has to be more to life than this. That was me in my 20s. I had bought into the dream, study hard, get a good job, make good money, and somehow you will live happily ever after. So I did everything I was told to do. And yet, deep down, I felt trapped. I remember looking around and realizing it was not just me. The people around me were tired too, frustrated and unfulfilled. But most of them stayed put, doing whatever it took to maintain the status quo. And I understand that, but I could not keep doing it myself. I made a decision that may not look like common sense from the outside. I walked away from a well-paying job in search of something better. I didn't have a solid plan. What I had was a belief that God had more for my life than just surviving, working, and paying bills. And that is exactly what this video is about. Why comfort is keeping so many women over 40 tired. Why staying in familiar territory can actually make life harder. And what my own journey taught me about purpose, obedience, and the life we risk missing when we keep choosing comfort over God's best. Now looking back, knowing what I know now, I would not do everything the same way. I made mistakes, unnecessary ones that cost me time, money, energy, and peace. So I'm not here to tell every woman to quit her job tomorrow or make some big emotional decision. That's not the point. The point is to share what I learned while searching for truth. Because it was during one of the darkest seasons of my life that God began to open my eyes to the reality that we were not created just to survive, pay bills, and make it through another week. We were created for purpose. Now, Miles Monroe often taught that purpose is the reason something exists. So if God created you, your purpose cannot begin with culture, our society's expectations, or fear, or what everyone else around you is doing. It has to begin with God's original intent. That was a major shift for me. I started to see that so much of what we call normal is not necessarily God's best. Sometimes it is just what we have been taught, what everyone around us accepts. Go to school, get the job, pay the bills, maybe get married, raise a family, go through the motions, stay tired, keep going, and do not question too much. And because everyone is doing it, we assume it must be right. But here is the deeper issue. Most of us do not question the way things are because questioning comes with a cost. When you start challenging the norm, you have to face uncomfortable truth. You may have to admit that the life you worked so hard to build is not fulfilling you the way you expected. You have to disappoint people, make decisions others do not understand, and let go of the approval that came from doing what was expected of you. That's not easy. So many women stay where they are, not because they are truly at peace, but because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. And yet, deep down, they know there is more. Not because they're ungrateful, not because they are rebellious, but because something inside them knows they were made for more than just survival. That is where comfort becomes dangerous because comfort does not always feel like comfort. Sometimes it feels like being responsible. Sometimes it feels like keeping the peace. Sometimes it feels like just being practical. But if that comfort is keeping you from becoming who God created you to be, it is no longer protecting you. It is keeping you trapped. So for a long time, I thought that if I could just leave my job, escape the system, and get out of the rat race, I would finally feel free. But over time, God began to show me something deeper. Work was never the enemy. Before sin entered the world, God placed man in the garden to work it and care for it. That means work existed before the fall. It was part of God's original design. In its truest form, work was never a curse. It was a gift, a way to cultivate what God created, to bring order, to use our gifts, to serve others, and to glorify God through what we build, create, solve, and contribute. The problem was never work itself. The problem is when work gets disconnected from purpose, when it becomes only about survival, bills, status, pressure, and keeping up with everyone else. That is when work starts to feel like bondage. And looking back, I can see that part of my own struggle was separating work from worship. Now, I saw ministry as spiritual, church as spiritual, serving God as something that happened inside a religious space. But my job, I saw that as secular, almost like a distraction from what God really wanted me to do. And because I saw it that way, I didn't always represent him well there. I would show up late, take longer lunches than I should, and give just enough to get by. And at that time, I told myself I was just tired, just frustrated, just trying to survive a job that no longer felt meaningful. But looking back, I was missing something important. If I belong to God, I do not only represent Him on Sunday, I represent Him at work, in how I show up, how I manage my time, how I treat people, the attitude I carry, the quality of my work, and whether I bring light or add to the darkness around me. And that was humbling for me. Because sometimes we are asking God to use us in big ways while we are being unfaithful in the place He had already placed us. We want to shine on a platform, but we are not being light in the workplace. We want influence, but we are not stewarding the influence we already have. This is where Rabbi Daniel Lapin's teaching resonates with me. He often says one of the primary ways we serve God is by serving His children. It's not just about making money, it is service. It is bringing your gifts, your wisdom, your integrity, your excellence into the world so that other people's lives are genuinely made better. That means even in a secular environment, your presence matters, your faith matters, your character matters, your standards matter. Because sometimes the way we bring light into a dark or broken system is not by escaping it. It is by showing up differently within it, with wisdom, integrity, excellence, compassion, and a spirit that reflects God. Work was always meant to be a gift. But when it loses its connection to God, to purpose, to service, and excellence, it becomes a burden. And when we treat our everyday work as though God has no part in it, we risk missing one of the very places He wanted to shape us, use us, and shine through us. So this is why I believe our exhaustion and unfulfillment are often trying to tell us something deeper. Sometimes the tiredness is not just about a busy schedule. Sometimes the emptiness is not just about needing a vacation. Sometimes the frustration is not just because life is hard. Sometimes it is pointing to a flaw in the very foundation we have built our lives on. Because many of us say we trust God, but our lives are still being shaped by culture. We say we seek Him first, but fear still drives our decision. We say we want to live in purpose, but we keep following the same patterns that leaves us comfortable, distracted, and depleted. This is hard to admit because it means the problem is not just that we are tired, it means we have built parts of our lives on beliefs that were never rooted in God's original intent. Beliefs like, this is just how life is. We have to stay where it is safe. We cannot question the system. You cannot disappoint people. This is what being responsible looks like. I already invested too much to let this go. I cannot start over at this age. But if those beliefs are keeping you from obedience, there are not wisdom. There are limitations. And if we are not willing to challenge them, we can spend years asking God for more while clinging to the very mindset that keeps us from receiving what He has for us. This is why we have to come back to God's original intent, not culture's intent, not their intent, not the world's definition of success or the life everyone else settled for, but God's intent. Because comfort will always protect the old foundation, but obedience requires us to examine it, to honestly ask, is this really God's best, or is this just what I was taught? Is this peace, or is this fear? Is this wisdom, or is this comfort? That is where change begins. Not with a reckless decision, not with copying someone else's journey, but with returning to God and allowing Him to show us what He intended from the very beginning. When the foundation is off, life will always feel heavier than it was meant to feel. But when we build on God's intent, we begin to find clarity, strength, and purpose again. So here is a question I want to leave with you. Is the life you are building rooted in God's original intent? Or is it being shaped by fear, culture, and comfort? Because comfort may feel safe in the moment, but if it is keeping you from obedience, it will eventually keep you trapped. And I do not believe God created us just to survive, stay tired, and go through the motions. He created us for purpose. So maybe the next step is not a big dramatic decision. Maybe it is simply returning to God and asking Him, Lord, what have I accepted as normal that was never your best for me? Because when we return to His intent, we begin to find clarity again. We begin to find strength again. And we begin to walk in the very purpose for which He created us.